Derrick smirked at the table of elite executives, gesturing toward Alicia with a dismissive wave. "This is Alicia, she's just my maid. She keeps the house running while I handle the real business," he chuckled, while Alicia stood there, swallowing the bile of public shame. People at the table shared knowing, arrogant laughs. Cameras flashed, capturing her humiliation. Then CEO Harold Whitman walked in, locked eyes with her, and said one sentence that turned Derrick's blood to ice, because the maid he just mocked was about to take the stage, and Derrick's carefully crafted lie was about to shatter in front of the world. Quick question before we continue, do you know what happens if you watch this video and don't subscribe or drop a comment? The algorithm assumes you didn't care about this story. It stops showing my videos to people like you. And this channel, along with all the stories I'm planning, disappears into the void. Here's what most viewers don't realize: your subscription isn't just about you. It's about everyone else who would love this story but will never find it unless enough people hit that button. And comments? Comments are rocket fuel for small channels. Every comment tells YouTube, this video is engaging. Show it to more people. So I'm asking two things: hit subscribe right now. And drop a comment, literally anything. I'm here. Keep going. Even an emoji. Just an encouraging word from you will make my day. Also tell me where you're watching from, let me know how far my story have gone. The algorithm doesn't care what you say. It only cares that you're engaged enough to say something. Every creator you follow started at 0 subscribers and 0 comments. Someone gave them a chance. Will you be that person for this channel? Now, back to the story. Please sit back, relax, as we dive fully into this really remarkable story. Derrick Lawson sat at his desk, staring at the embossed invitation on his laptop screen as if it were a golden ticket to a new life. Whitman Holdings Executive Gala. Black tie. By invitation only. His heart hammered in his chest. This was it. The moment he'd been clawing toward for 3 years. 3 years of laughing at Harold Whitman's terrible golf stories, 3 years of pretending to enjoy 18-year-old scotch that tasted like burning wood, 3 years of being the first to arrive and the last to leave. And finally, it had paid off. An invitation to the gala meant one thing: he was being seen. And in Derrick's world, being seen by the right people was the only currency that mattered. "Alicia," he called out, his voice echoing through their spacious townhouse. From the kitchen, the scent of seasoned chicken and roasted vegetables drifted down the hallway, accompanied by the soft melody of a piano ballad playing from the speaker. She appeared moments later, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel, her face warm with that familiar, genuine smile. "Yes, Derrick." He turned the laptop toward her, unable to contain his grin. "Look at this. The Whitman Gala. They invited me, Alicia. Do you know what this means?" She stepped closer, her smile widening. "It means they're finally recognizing how hard you work." He nodded, but quickly corrected her. "It means I'm finally being seen, Alicia. By the people who actually matter. The partners. The board members. Harold Whitman himself." He leaned back in his chair, already picturing himself in that ballroom, shaking hands, making impressions, becoming unforgettable. She glanced at the elegant script on the screen. "It looks beautiful. I suppose you'll need to rent a tuxedo." "Already ordered," he said, waving dismissively. "And you'll come with me, obviously. It's a couple's event. Everyone brings their wives." Alicia blinked, surprised. "Me? Of course." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But let's keep it simple, okay? You know how these high society types are. Conservative. Traditional. I don't want them thinking I'm out of place." Her smile faltered slightly. "Out of place? What do you mean?" He sighed, setting down his coffee mug. "You know what I mean. Just something modest. Understated. You always look best when you keep it low-key anyway. Her chest tightened. She'd heard this tone before. She'd learned to decode his language. Modest meant invisible. Understated meant don't outshine me. Low-key meant don't remind them where we came from. All right, she said quietly. Something simple. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. And Alicia, one more thing. When we get there, if I introduce you a bit differently, just play along. Some of these people are old money, Ivy League types. They wouldn't understand our background. It's just business etiquette. Her steps slowed. She turned back. Differently? What does that mean? He waved his hand as if brushing away a fly. Nothing dramatic. Maybe I'll say you help out around the house. Just until they warm up to me. Once they see my value, we can clarify things. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. You mean tell people I'm your maid? Derrick's jaw tightened. Don't make it sound like that. It's strategy, Alicia. These people are judgmental. You wouldn't understand how corporate politics work. I understand respect, Derrick. And pretending I'm your maid doesn't sound like respect. He exhaled sharply, irritation flickering across his face. Can you not make this a thing? Just one night. I'm trying to build a future for us. Once I make partner, everything changes. Better house. Better life. Isn't that what you want? Her silence stretched between them like a chasm. The piano music in the background seemed to grow softer, sadder. Finally, she nodded. If that's what you need. He smiled, relief flooding through him. That's my girl. Later that night, Alicia lay awake beside him, listening to his steady, contented breathing. She stared at the ceiling, replaying his words in her mind. How easily he'd said it. How small he'd made her sound. Once, Derrick had loved her for exactly who she was, for her mind, her ambition, her strength. Now, it seemed, those same qualities embarrassed him. She whispered into the darkness, you'll see me one day, Derrick. For who I really am. But he was already asleep, dreaming of crystal chandeliers and standing ovations. The following week was a blur of preparation. Derrick stood in front of the full-length mirror, adjusting his bow tie for the third time. The tuxedo fit him perfectly, sharp lines and crisp fabric that whispered success. He turned slightly, admiring his reflection. This was the man who belonged at the Whitman Holdings gala. This was the man who deserved a seat at the table with the elite. How do I look? He asked, not turning around. Alicia emerged from the bathroom, and for a moment, Derrick's breath caught. She wore a champagne silk dress that draped elegantly across her figure, the V-neck sophisticated and understated. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek low bun, pearl earrings catching the light. She looked stunning. Too stunning. Beautiful, he said, his smile fading slightly. But maybe a bit too much. Her hand went instinctively to her collarbone. Too much. Derrick, you said formal. I know. It's just very attention-grabbing. These people, they're old money. They don't like flash. He walked over, examining her as if she were a business presentation that needed tweaking. Maybe lose the earrings. And the dress, it's very low-cut. Alicia's jaw tightened. This is modest, Derrick. It's a classic cut. Professional. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I'm not trying to start a fight. I just need tonight to go smoothly. You understand, right? This is my career we're talking about. She understood perfectly. She understood that no matter what she wore, how she looked, or what she said, it would never be enough. Because Derrick wasn't worried about her being too flashy. He was worried about her outshining him. I'll keep the earrings, she said quietly. They were my grandmother's. He wanted to argue but checked his watch instead. Fine. We need to leave in 10 minutes. Remember what we talked about? The question hung in the air like a threat. I remember, she whispered. Good. He grabbed his keys, his phone, checking himself one more time in the mirror. Tonight changes everything, Alicia. Tonight, I become someone who matters. She watched him walk toward the door, his shoulders squared with confidence, his head high with ambition. And she wondered when exactly he had stopped seeing her as someone who already mattered. The drive to the Whitman estate was silent except for the GPS directions and Derrick's occasional muttering as he rehearsed talking points. Alicia stared out the window, watching the city lights blur into streaks of gold and white, her grandmother's pearls cool against her skin, a small reminder of who she really was beneath the role Derrick had written for her. The Whitman estate emerged from the tree-lined driveway like something out of a dream, all white columns and golden windows glowing against the night sky. Valets in crisp uniforms directed them to the entrance where a red carpet stretched toward massive oak doors. Derrick straightened his bow tie one last time, then turned to her. Remember, he said, his voice low and urgent. If anyone asks, you help around the house. Keep it vague. Don't offer details. Alicia's hands trembled slightly in her lap. She thought about the property law degree mounted on the wall of her home office, hidden away where Derrick's colleagues would never see it. She thought about the commercial real estate contracts she'd negotiated just last month, the multi-million-dollar deals she'd closed with nothing but her wit and expertise. She thought about Harold Whitman, her godfather, who had walked her down the aisle at their wedding when her own father couldn't be there. Derrick, she started, her voice barely audible. Maybe we should just tell them the truth. I don't have to mention everything, but I could just say I work in law, or consulting, or... No. His response was immediate and sharp. These people are sharks, Alicia. They'll pick apart every detail. Where did you go to school? What firm? Who are your clients? And when they find out you went to state school instead of Harvard, when they realize you're not from their world, they'll use it against me. He reached over, taking her hand, softening his tone. I'm not ashamed of you. I'm protecting us. Once I'm established, once they see my value, then we can be honest. But tonight? Tonight I need you to trust me. She looked at him, at the desperation flickering beneath his confidence, at the man she'd married who used to celebrate her accomplishments instead of hiding them. The man who once called her brilliant now needed her to play dumb. The man who'd promised to stand beside her now asked her to stand behind him. I trust you, she lied. He squeezed her hand, relief washing over his face. That's my girl. Let's go make history. They stepped out of the car into the cool evening air, and Alicia felt herself shrinking, folding inward, becoming smaller with each step toward those golden doors. Behind them, her real life waited. Ahead, a performance that would cost her more than Derrick could ever understand. The ballroom was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers cast warm golden light across marble floors, illuminating tables draped in ivory linen and decorated with towering centerpieces of white orchids and roses. Executives in designer tuxedos mingled with women dripping in diamonds, champagne flutes glittering in their hands. A string quartet played softly in the corner, their music barely audible over the hum of expensive conversation. Derrick's eyes lit up like a child in a candy store. There's Marcus Chen from Acquisitions, he whispered, already pulling away from Alicia. Stay close but not too close. I need to work the room. For the next hour, Alicia became a ghost. She trailed behind Derrick as he bounced from group to group, laughing too loudly at mediocre jokes, nodding enthusiastically at boring anecdotes about golf handicaps and vacation homes in the Hamptons. Whenever someone's gaze drifted toward her, Derrick would subtly shift his position, blocking her from view, redirecting attention back to himself. When they finally reached their assigned table, Alicia's heart sank. Nameplate cards marked their seats among 6 other couples, all senior executives and their spouses. A blonde woman in a glittering silver gown immediately extended her hand toward Derrick. "You must be Derrick Lawson." "I'm Catherine Blackwell. My husband James is VP of Operations." Derrick practically glowed. "Mrs. Blackwell, what an honor. I've heard incredible things about your husband's restructuring initiatives." As he settled into his chair, Alicia moved toward the seat beside him, but his hand shot out, stopping her. "Actually, sweetheart, why don't you sit at the end? That way you can slip out easily if you need to touch up your makeup or, handle anything." The message was clear. Stay out of the way. She took the seat at the far end, isolated from the cluster of executives. Dinner arrived, course after elegant course, while Derrick held court at the other end of the table. His voice rose above the others, animated and eager. "So how did you two meet?" Catherine asked, gesturing between Derrick and Alicia. Derrick didn't miss a beat. "Oh, Alicia. She's actually my house manager. Keeps everything running smoothly at home while I focus on the business side. Don't know what I'd do without her organizational skills." The table erupted in polite, knowing laughter. Alicia's fork froze halfway to her mouth, the champagne sauce on her salmon suddenly tasting like ash. A hush fell over the ballroom as the lights dimmed slightly. Harold Whitman rose from the head table, his presence commanding immediate attention. At 72, he carried himself with the quiet authority of a man who'd built an empire from nothing. His silver hair caught the chandelier light as he approached the microphone at the center of the room. "Good evening, everyone," his voice resonated through the speakers, warm but powerful. "Thank you all for joining us tonight. As many of you know, Whitman Holdings has reached unprecedented growth this year, and that success belongs to each of you." Applause rippled through the crowd. Derrick sat up straighter, his chest puffed with borrowed pride. "But tonight," Harold continued, his eyes scanning the room until they found Alicia at the far end of her table, "I want to recognize someone whose contributions have been truly exceptional. Someone whose brilliant legal mind saved this company over $12 million in commercial real estate negotiations this quarter alone." Derrick's smile began to falter. He glanced around, wondering which lawyer Harold was about to praise. "This person," Harold's gaze locked onto Alicia, "restructured our entire property acquisition strategy, identified critical compliance issues that could have cost us our operating licenses, and did it all while remaining humble enough to let others take credit." He extended his hand toward her. "Alicia Lawson, would you please join me?" The ballroom froze. Every head turned toward the end of Derrick's table where Alicia sat, her champagne dress glowing under the lights, her grandmother's pearls suddenly looking less like accessories and more like armor. Derrick's face drained of color. His mouth opened but no sound came out. The executives at his table stared at him, their expressions shifting from confusion to dawning horror to barely concealed disgust. Harold walked toward Alicia, a microphone in his hand, his smile both proud and protective. "Come, goddaughter. It's time these people knew exactly who you are." The word, goddaughter, detonated like a bomb. Catherine Blackwell's hand flew to her mouth. James turned to Derrick with eyes like daggers. The entire table recoiled as if Derrick had suddenly become radioactive. Alicia stood slowly, her legs trembling but her spine straight. She walked toward Harold, each step measured and deliberate, and when he handed her the microphone, their eyes met with an understanding that needed no words. She turned to face the room, to face Derrick, and in that moment, everything he'd built on lies began to crumble. The car ride home felt like drowning in silence. Derrick gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles had gone white, his jaw clenched as he stared at the road ahead. Alicia sat in the passenger seat, still wearing her champagne dress, her grandmother's pearls now feeling like a victory medal against her skin. "Say something," Derrick finally croaked, his voice hoarse. Alicia turned to look at him, her expression unreadable. "What would you like me to say?" I don't know anything. Scream at me. Tell me I'm an idiot. Just stop sitting there like a stranger. A stranger, she repeated softly. That's interesting, Derrick. Because tonight, you introduced me as your maid to a room full of people I've been working with for 2 years. People whose contracts I've negotiated. Whose deals I've structured. Whose legal nightmares I've untangled at 3 in the morning while you slept peacefully beside me. His hands trembled on the wheel. You never told me. How was I supposed to know you were Harold's goddaughter? That you were working with the firm? Alicia laughed, but there was no humor in it. I told you, Derrick. 100 times. Every time you asked about my day and I said I was consulting on property law. Every time I mentioned working with commercial clients. Every time I tried to tell you about a case and you changed the subject because my work wasn't as important as yours. She paused, letting the words sink in. You never asked because you never cared. My accomplishments didn't fit the narrative you'd written for yourself. That's not fair. The Riverside Plaza deal, she continued, her voice gaining strength. That was me. The zoning variance that saved the expansion project? Me. The compliance audit that prevented federal investigation? Also me. And tonight, while you were telling Catherine Blackwell that I was your house manager, I was the reason Whitman Holdings stayed out of bankruptcy court. Derrick pulled into their driveway and killed the engine. The silence pressed down on them like a physical weight. Harold asked me to keep it quiet, Alicia said, staring at their dark house. He wanted to see how people treated me when they didn't know whose goddaughter I was, when they didn't know my credentials. He called it a character test. She turned to face Derrick fully. You failed spectacularly. He opened his mouth to respond, but she was already stepping out of the car, her champagne dress disappearing into the night, leaving him alone with the ruins of his ambition. The guest room door clicked shut with a finality that echoed through the house. Derrick stood in the hallway, still in his tuxedo, listening to the sound of Alicia moving behind the closed door. The scrape of hangers. The soft thud of drawers opening and closing. She was unpacking, settling in, drawing a line in their home that said, "You are not welcome here." He slept alone that night, staring at the ceiling of their bedroom, the empty space beside him vast and accusatory. Monday morning arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Derrick walked into Whitman Holdings at his usual time, his coffee in hand, his suit pressed, his game face carefully constructed. But the moment he stepped off the elevator, he felt it. The shift in atmospheric pressure that comes when everyone knows your shame. Marcus Chen from Acquisitions, who'd laughed at his jokes just days ago, suddenly found his phone fascinating when Derrick approached. Catherine Blackwell, who'd been so warm at the gala, turned and walked in the opposite direction when she saw him in the hallway. Even the administrative assistant stopped making eye contact. In the break room, conversations died the instant he entered. Whispers followed him like a shadow. Can you believe he called her his maid? His own wife. Harold's goddaughter, no less. His desk felt like an island of isolation in an ocean of judgment. Emails that should have received responses within hours sat unanswered for days. Meeting invitations he'd expected never materialized. The partnership track he'd been so certain of seemed to evaporate like morning fog. On Wednesday, Harold Whitman himself appeared at Derrick's cubicle. Not his office, Derrick had never warranted an office. The older man's expression was granite. Mr. Lawson, I think we should discuss your future here. The word future sounded like a eulogy. At home, Alicia remained a ghost. She left for work before he woke, returned after he'd retreated to the bedroom. She prepared her own meals, washed her own dishes, moved through their shared space like smoke, present but untouchable. The only evidence of her existence was the light under the guest room door late at night, and the sound of her voice on phone calls with her godfather, their laughter a reminder of a world where Derrick no longer belonged. He'd wanted to be seen by the right people. Now everyone saw him clearly. And what they saw disgusted them. Dr. Evelyn Harris's office was nothing like Derrick expected. No leather couch, no pretentious diplomas covering the walls, just two comfortable chairs facing each other in a room painted soft blue, with a single window overlooking a garden. She was a black woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a notepad she barely touched. "Tell me why you're here, Derrick." He'd rehearsed this moment a dozen times, but now the words stuck in his throat. "I ruined my marriage. My career. Everything. Tell me about your father." The question blindsided him. What does he have to do with this? Humor me. Derrick leaned back, his jaw tight. "My father worked 3 jobs to keep us in a house we couldn't afford, in a neighborhood where we didn't belong. He drove a leased BMW he couldn't pay for. Wore suits from thrift stores that he dry cleaned weekly to look expensive. The memories tasted bitter. He used to say, 'Son, poor is a condition. Looking poor is a choice. Never let them see you as less.' And did it work? Did looking successful make him successful?" Derrick's laugh was hollow. He had a heart attack at 52, stressed himself to death trying to impress people who never cared. "We lost the house 6 months later. Lost everything. At his funeral, all those neighbors he tried so hard to impress. None of them came." Dr. Harris let the silence sit between them, heavy with truth. "I swore I'd be different," Derrick continued, his voice cracking. "I swore I'd actually become the man my father pretended to be. But instead, I just became a better actor. I traded authenticity for acceptance. And when my wife, my brilliant, accomplished wife, didn't fit the image I was selling, He couldn't finish. You erased her." The words hit like a physical blow. Derrick's hands covered his face. "She was everything I actually achieved. The only real thing in my life of pretense. And I called her my maid because I was so terrified of being seen as not enough." "Who wasn't enough, Derrick? You, or your father?" He looked up, tears streaming down his face. "I don't know anymore. I've been performing for so long, I don't know who I am without the act." Dr. Harris leaned forward slightly. "Then perhaps it's time you found out. Not for Alicia. Not for Harold Whitman. For yourself." The mask Derrick had worn his entire life finally cracked, and underneath, he found only a frightened boy desperate to matter. Dr. Harris had given him homework. Find work where no one knows your name, where there's no applause, no recognition. Learn what it means to serve without an audience. That's how Derrick ended up at Mercy House Community Shelter on Saturday morning, wearing jeans and an old t-shirt, holding a mop bucket. The shelter director, a no-nonsense woman named Gloria, looked him up and down with barely concealed skepticism. "You sure you're ready for this? This isn't a photo op for your conscience." "I'm sure," Derrick said, though he wasn't. Gloria handed him rubber gloves and a bottle of industrial cleaner. "Bathrooms. 3 of them. They need to be spotless by lunch service." The bathrooms were worse than anything Derrick had imagined. Years of institutional use, broken tiles, rust stains that seemed permanent. He scrubbed toilets on his knees, his expensive watch, the one he wore to prove his worth, getting splashed with cleaning solution. Nobody thanked him. Nobody noticed. A homeless veteran named Curtis shuffled in while Derrick was cleaning the second bathroom. "Don't forget behind the toilets," he said matter-of-factly. "That's where it gets bad." Derrick nodded, suddenly aware that Curtis knew more about doing this job well than he did. Over the following weeks, Derrick returned every Saturday. He mopped floors, scrubbed pots in the industrial kitchen, sorted donated clothes that smelled of mothballs and someone else's life. His hands developed calluses. His back ached. And slowly, something shifted. One Saturday, he was taking out trash when he overheard Gloria talking to a volunteer coordinator. "That Lawson guy. Didn't think he'd last 2 weeks. But he shows up. Does the work nobody wants. Doesn't need his ego stroked." She paused. "He's learning." Derrick stood there, holding a bag of trash, and felt something he hadn't experienced in years, pride that had nothing to do with being seen. The work was invisible. The labor was thankless. And yet, when Curtis nodded at him in passing, when Gloria handed him more challenging tasks, when the shelter stayed clean and functional because of his quiet efforts, Derrick began to understand what Alicia had been trying to tell him all along. Worth wasn't performed. It was practiced. It wasn't about the spotlight. It was about showing up when no one was watching and doing what needed to be done anyway. He thought about Alicia, managing their home, supporting his career, negotiating million-dollar deals in silence. All that invisible labor he'd dismissed as simple, domestic work. 6 months had passed since the gala. 6 months of therapy, shelter work, and living in a house that felt more like a tomb than a home. Derrick had stopped chasing Alicia for conversations she wasn't ready to have. He'd learned, finally, to give her space while he did the work of becoming someone worth coming back to. The text message surprised him one Thursday evening: "Coffee tomorrow? The cafe on Morrison Street. 10 a.m. He arrived 15 minutes early, his palms sweating. No rehearsed speeches this time. No performance. Just him, sitting at a corner table in jeans and a simple sweater, hands wrapped around a cup of black coffee he was too nervous to drink. Alicia walked in wearing a navy blazer and slacks, her hair in that same sleek bun, but something in her face had softened. Or maybe hardened. He couldn't tell. She ordered tea and sat across from him, the small table feeling like an ocean between them. "You look different," she said finally. "I am different." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Or maybe I'm just finally becoming who I should have been all along." She studied him with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Gloria from Mercy House called me. Said you've been volunteering. Every Saturday for 6 months. Derrick's surprise must have shown on his face. "I'm on their board of directors, Derrick. Have been for 3 years. A ghost of a smile. Another thing you never asked about." The irony wasn't lost on him. "I'm not doing it for credit. I'm doing it because I need to understand what I took for granted. What I devalued in you." Alicia wrapped her hands around her teacup. "Dr. Harris also called. Said you've been doing the work. You've been checking on me. I needed to know if this was real or just another performance." Her voice was steady but not cruel. "I needed to know if you were changing for me, or for yourself." "For myself," he said quietly. "Because the man I was doesn't deserve you. And if I'm honest, I didn't even deserve myself." The silence stretched between them, but this time it wasn't suffocating. It was thoughtful. "I'm not ready to come home, Derrick." His heart cracked, but he nodded. "I know. But I'm willing to have coffee again. Next month. Same time. We'll see where we are then." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was a door left open, and Derrick had learned enough to know that was more than he'd earned. As Alicia stood to leave, she paused. "The man scrubbing toilets at the shelter? That's closer to the man I married than the one at the gala ever was." She walked out, and Derrick sat alone with his cold coffee, understanding that rebuilding wasn't about grand gestures. It was about showing up, doing the work, and hoping that one day, she'd see enough change to risk her heart again. "This is the last time I'm asking. If you made it this far, the story meant something to you. You invested time. You felt something. You cared about what happened to these characters. Now I'm asking you to invest 7 more seconds. 2 seconds, hit subscribe. 5 seconds, leave a comment. Literally anything. Because here's the reality, subscribers tell me to keep creating. Comments tell YouTube to keep promoting. And right now, I need both. Don't be most viewers who ghost after watching. Be the person who helps this channel grow. Be the reason the next story reaches someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and comment right now. Not tomorrow. Not if the next one is good. Now. I'm building something here. And I want you to be part of it.